Migration. So pretty neat feature and really nice, especially that's what I love about ORM in relational or SQL databases. So what if you don't know what migrations are, so migrations is a way of a way of controlling the versions of your tables or your previous versions of your tables. And what it is, it's similar to Git. And Git, if you understand, if you know by now, it always has the previous version of your code. So whenever you have whenever you made a mistake, you go check out the previous version of your commit. So for example, we have here our previous commits, and if I want to go to our previous commit where we didn't have Prisma initialized, I will use this, for example, this commit ID. And if I want to check out what happened at that time and what I had at that time, I'll just say git check out and go towards this previous version of the project. So notice here we had Prisma at that time. In this current version we had Prisma, but in this version when I say git check out, I didn't have it. So what you could check through here is if you notice that you didn't initialize the Prisma properly, or any code has been made mistake, you could check the previous version to check the code and fix something, or check something like you lost a line of code, or anything that you might think is necessary to check out in your previous version. Now, this is similar to migration. What you could do in migration, or anything that any ORM, that's what the best part of ORMs are, is if you made a mistake in your previous, let's go back to our current version. So what a migration would do is it checks out the previous version, so you will be able to check out the previous version of your table. Sometimes initially your table will have some bare bone attributes, but in the future or in the long run you will always add additional types of columns or attributes in your models or tables. So whenever you add something, you may make a mistake. So whenever you make a mistake, what you could do is go to your previous version and go back to your previous version and use that previous version instead. So instead of talking too much here, what we'll do is we'll do that in practice, how to do migrations. So how to do migration for Prisma we'll do is yarn Prisma Migrate, and what we'll do is migrate development, and then we'll mention, similar to git commit, we have to mention the name of the migration, and we'll mention the name of the migration will be init, so initializing the project. Now it generated several things. First, it created our database, which is for the SQLite. So it created our database, which contains the models of what we have done, and we have a directory called migrations. When we check in our migrations, what we have here is some numbers, and that number represents the date of the time that we have done the migration, and the name of the migration. So when you click here, you will notice there is something called migration.sql. So click here, and since it's our first version of migration, we haven't had it previously the database of user, the table of the user and book. In migration.sql for our first version, it will create the table book and create the table user with the specified integer or specified attributes that we have done in our schema.prisma, like for example ID, name, email, ID, title, and description. So these are the scripts to create it in our database. So now, for example, we want to change something, add a new version of our table. So we want to add a new attribute in our table, and that will be we want to change something, and in the user we'll mention that will be we want to add password. And another thing that I want to add is as well, I want to make this column auto incremented. So whenever whenever there is a row added, this one will be incremented whenever a row has been created. How do we do that? Is by adding a new decorator, and that decorator will be called default, and we'll mention it will be auto increment. So it's a special attribute or annotation. You could check out their documentation as well to know more about how to add additional attributes for each column. So we will do that similar to our book, and we will add that as well. So now we have changed our models. So what we do next is we will do the migration similar to what we have done previously. We'll mention Prisma, and then we'll mention migrate, and then dev, and we'll mention the name of it, and that will be auto increment. Now it will generate another migration folder. So when you check here, so in the migration directory we have another one that is named auto increment. So click this directory, and when you check in the migration SQL, it doesn't create the table anymore because we already have the table here. But what it does is changing the table, the current table that we have. So it will alter the table, and it will change towards the ID will be auto incremented, and it will do the same thing towards our book as well. So that will be it regarding that, right? So in another word, Prisma migration, or migration in a sense, keeps the versions of your tables or the database, your database as a whole. So whenever we change something in our schema to Prisma, it will we have to run migration in order first to change something in our database, and at the same time keep the versions up to date in our database. Similar to GitHub, similar to Git, whenever we change something, it shows we have changes here. We need to commit towards that change in order for other people to access the new changes across the whole project. That will be it for migration. And the next video, what we'll talk about is we will execute some methods to interact our new database, a new table that will be called user in our project, and that will be in the user's service route controller. Yeah, and I hope that makes sense. Take care. Have a good day.